My name is Donald Deya. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Pan-African Lawyers Union, PALU, based in Arusha, Tanzania, and covering the continent from there, bringing together Africa's bar associations, law societies, and individual lawyers. PALU has been very active in the spaces around the high-level panel on illicit financial flows from Africa from its beginning. Our then president, Mr. Akere Muna, was appointed one of the members of the panel under the chairmanship of His Excellency President Thabo Mbeki. So PALU supported the panel as it was doing its work up until it published its report and submitted it to the heads of state at the AU Assembly, and it was adopted and made an AU Assembly declaration. Thereafter, President Mbeki appointed PALU to be amongst the consortium to help him implement the Assembly decision on illicit financial flows. And also, when the Common African Position on Asset Recovery was adopted, PALU was appointed a member of the working group to implement the Common African Position on Asset Recovery, CAPAR. And currently, recently, we have been asked to provide the secretariat for the CAPAR working group. So we're here to support the high-level panel and the CAPAR working group. Of course, as an association of lawyers, PALU has a very wide mandate. Our first mandate is to defend the independence of the legal profession and judicial independence in Africa, and then to represent our members and to develop the law and the legal profession in Africa. But we also do public interest programs on human and people's rights, on democracy, elections and governance, on peace and security, and also on economic justice and governance, which is where we tackle corruption, illicit financial flows, sovereign debt, and this whole area now of asset recovery. Our participation in this conference, it is important first that we raise awareness, because still so many Africans and so many friends of Africa don't know about the Assembly Declaration and decisions on IFF, and so many people don't know about the Common African Position on Asset Recovery and Return, CAPAR. So amongst my own objectives is that we'll disseminate the existence of CAPAR to a wide range of stakeholders, to activists, anti-corruption activists, to government officials, to journalists, especially investigative journalists, to the citizens of Africa, and to civil society and the friends of Africa. So I think that's very important. And then secondly, to begin to show people, especially our government officials, how the CAPAR is a strong policy instrument that should influence them and help them inside the countries when they're beginning to put in place processes to recover the assets that have been lost from the country, be they financial or liquid assets, or non-financial or non-liquid assets. Illicit financial flows lies at the thin line between what is illegal and what is immoral. There are some things that are clearly illegal, like bribery is illegal, procurement fraud is illegal, trafficking in human beings, trafficking in drugs, trafficking in hazardous wastes, trafficking wildlife products, those are illegal. But there's some area where now you can say it's not strictly written in the law expressly to be legal, but certainly it is not fair, like aggressive tax avoidance, like some certain kinds of transfer mispricing. So it is a role of lawyers to help our governments and to help our parliaments to come up with comprehensive laws, rules and regulations which minimize the scope for aggressive tax avoidance and other activities which end up cheating the continent out of its resources. And it's also the role of lawyers, ethical lawyers, to balance when you're representing your client, especially if your client is the big corporations and so on, to balance between very strongly representing your clients, but also taking into account the public interest, so that you make sure that it's a fair deal where everybody wins. It's not easy to persuade people to do that, but it's the thing for an ethical lawyer to do. And in the context of asset recovery, is to help our governments when assets have been illicitly or illegally removed from our continent or from our countries and we have discovered them. It's important for lawyers to be very active, dynamic and robust in helping our governments to recover that money back, so that that money can be used for development, to build schools, to build hospitals, to build roads, and to make sure that our people live a life of dignity. I think the Glencore scandal is a very good example, a very good picture to show of what we have been fighting. Glencore is engaging in natural resource extraction in Africa. It is ending up with the kind of lopsided deals that we've been complaining about, which end up extracting from the continent without giving its fair share. The way it manages to enter into this kind of contracts is by bribing and corrupting our public officials. Now, it has been caught because countries like the United States have much larger and much more sophisticated investigation and surveillance capacities than we do. It has caught them engaging in bribery in Africa. Yet, they are being fined, they are doing a plea bargain and paying these fines to the US and to the UK. There's still no accountability within Africa for what Glencore did on its part. And there's no accountability for the accomplices of Glencore in Africa, within our governments, within our private sector and elsewhere. So it is very important that us, as citizens of Africa, and it's all of us, investigative journalists, accountants, bankers, engineers and lawyers, we discuss as much as we can, find out the information that's publicly available about these crimes of corruption and bribery, and put in place measures using our laws to ensure accountability for Glencore and also for its local accomplices, and to make sure that the harm that they did to our economy is repaired by way of fines, by way of damages, by way of cancellations of loop-sided contracts and so on. So there's a lot of work for a range of us to do to ensure there's justice for what Glencore did to these African countries. It is indeed true that amongst what we call the enablers or the gatekeepers for illicit financial flows are professionals such as lawyers, professionals such as bankers and so on, who are used to create these complex legal schemes and financing schemes and pricing schemes through which money is hidden or money is laundered. And that is wrong. So for we as PALU, for instance, we passed 5 years ago a code of ethics on anti-corruption and compliance in business relations in Africa, where we laid a high standard. It's a voluntary code for our members to make sure that they can do business ethically, they can represent clients ethically, but they also account for the public interest, and they ensure that they are not used as enablers or gatekeepers. So that one we're able to do, and we encourage many of our members to do that. But in the cases like for Glencore, what we're encouraging is human rights lawyers, public interest lawyers, justice lawyers, to work very creatively with our governments when our governments are willing and able to investigate and prosecute. And where governments are not willing and able to investigate and prosecute, to look and see what tools they have within their legal system that they can use to pursue justice. So for instance, in the case of our former president, Akere Muna, who's also a member of the high-level panel on illicit financial flows, in respect of Cameroon, his home country, he has launched private processes to trigger formal investigation and prosecution of Glencore in at least 4 jurisdictions within Cameroon. So we've brought in colleagues from other countries who have also been identified as having been victims of this Glencore scandal from 6 other countries, so that we can brainstorm together for each of them to see within their legal system what are the measures they can take to trigger meaningful investigations and prosecutions, so we get justice for these 6 countries. We welcome very much our colleagues from the global movement EITI, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, to Africa. It's the first time that they're holding their triennial conference in Africa, and we're very glad that they chose the beautiful city of Dakar to do that. This gives us an opportunity as the African members of EITI to raise our voice, our concerns, our proposals, our recommendations, our way of doing things to be more mainstreamed within EITI. We appreciate that there are diversities in how to do things in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in Latin America. So it is important that the African ideas and the African proposals are taken seriously. And we're very glad that there are enough colleagues from North, South, East, and Central Africa present across the road to do that. But it's also a challenge to EITI. One of the big supporters of EITI is Glencore, which we have just been talking about. This scandal around Glencore first hit the airwaves almost a year ago. We have not had a strong voice from EITI on what to do with what Glencore has been caught, has committed, has confessed in plea bargains filed in court to be doing. So on the one hand, we welcome EITI and strengthen their imprint in Africa, but we also challenge them to put their money where their mouth is, and actually we see what statement they'll make about what has been publicly disclosed to have happened by Glencore. Dr. Tajuddin Abdul Rahim always used to tell us, organize, don't agonize. So this is my challenge to the people of Africa. No effort is too small. No effort is too big. If we continuously organize, we'll be able to stem illicit financial flows from Africa. We'll be able to keep these resources within our continent, and we'll be able to ensure these resources are directed at the development of Africa, the African people, the girls and boys, women and men. So I just encourage us to be strong and to organize, don't agonize.